when a renowned chess grandmaster invited a black woman working as a cleaner to play a casual game of chess just for his amusement and to entertain his wealthy guests. He thought it would be the perfect bit of spectacle. But what happened next not only silenced the entire room, it shattered every assumption he had about superiority, social status, and the true meaning of this noble game. Crystal chandelier light sparkled off the polished marble floor, creating an atmosphere of lavish grandeur and power. Rows of inlaid ivory and ebony boards stood like thrones throughout the great hall, each chess piece buffed so finely you could see your reflection in it. This was one of America's most prestigious chess clubs, where the white elite gathered to flaunt their status, influence, and wealth. Conversations revolved around high-profile tournament victories, exotic international competitions, and the names of famous grandmasters, discussed like priceless jewels. Yet, in this dazzling setting, Maya Bennett remained invisible. She moved quietly from board to board, carefully dusting each square and each piece. After 3 years on the job, she knew every tiny chip in those luxury sets, yet no one among the wealthy members ever bothered to learn her name or even acknowledge her as a person. She was all too familiar with the sneers, the whispered insults, and even the outright slurs thrown her way. She remembered one afternoon, polishing a marble queen piece, when a cold voice cut in behind her. "Be careful, Bennett," said Lucas Harrington, the club's top grandmaster, his tone dripping with disdain. "That piece is worth more than your monthly wage, but I suppose someone like you could never appreciate its value." Lucas Harrington was the shining star of the club, and his self-satisfied cruelty stung deeply. Yet Maya merely nodded and continued her work, her face calm even though her heart ached with every word. In truth, Maya understood the real value of those pieces better than anyone. Chess was her memory, her childhood, her passion, cultivated on afternoons spent at her grandmother's cramped apartment in the Atlanta projects. The cheap plastic set Grandma bought from the corner store was Maya's first window into this intricate world. During those hard times, her grandmother always told her, "Chess is a game of minds. Respect for your opponent." It's never meant to display wealth or pretension. That's why this job tormented her soul. Each day she witnessed the wealthy twisted her beloved game into a status symbol, a weapon for bragging rights, and a means to demean others. They misinterpreted moves, mocked the strategies of world-class players, and above all, looked down on people of color like her. She'd even overheard an affluent lady remark, "I don't see why they let someone who looks like her touch these pieces." She'd never grasped the subtlety of the game. Every cutting word felt like a blade, but Maya stayed silent. 3 years at this club, she never let on about her own talent. Behind her humble uniform and silent grace, she harbored a genius-level grasp of tactics, one so keen that even the proudest players in this room could not match it. She'd accepted this menial work simply to stay close to the chess world she loved, even as it warped around her in prejudice and privilege. But tonight felt different. The mood in the club crackled with tension. The usual laughter carried a sharper edge. Maya sensed that something momentous was about to happen, but she could never have guessed that she herself would become the centerpiece of this fateful evening. Then, Lucas Harrington's cold gaze locked onto her, and Maya felt her pulse quicken. When Lucas Harrington's cold gaze fixed squarely on her that night, in a single fleeting moment, memories Maya thought long buried surged back with a fierce intensity. Behind her usual calm lay the buried echoes of a childhood both bitter and brilliant, dreams stolen by cruel prejudice. Maya Bennett had grown up in a rundown house in one of Atlanta's poorest neighborhoods, a place people avoided and feared. It was where children came of age amid hunger, crime, and the ever-looming shadows of bias. Her parents died in a tragic car accident when she was just 5, leaving little Maya in the frail, aged arms of her grandmother, Alice Bennett. Grandma Alice was strong, wise, and unbreakable, someone who had weathered the harshest days of 1960s segregation. She owned little money or property, but in that tiny home she passed to Maya the most precious gift imaginable: a love of chess. One sweltering summer afternoon, when Maya was 7, Grandma Alice brought home a beat-up plastic chess set she'd found at a thrift store down the street. The pieces were crude and chipped, yet to Maya they opened a wondrous new world. Alice, her eyes shining with pride, placed each piece in Maya's small hands and whispered, "Do you see, Maya? On this board, every piece has its own value, its own strength and purpose. What matters isn't how fine it looks, but what you do with it." From those first games by her grandmother's side, Maya displayed a rare intelligence and intuitive flair. She memorized openings at once, spotted tactical gaps instantly, and made moves that left Alice both astonished and beaming. Within months, at age 8, Maya was the standout player in her neighborhood, where older men gathered under the big oak tree each evening to play. They affectionately nicknamed her the Little Queen of the Board. Maya's extraordinary talent soon drew the attention of Frank Wallace, a kind gym teacher who volunteered to start a school chess club. Mr. Wallace, the first white man to regard Maya with genuine respect rather than condescension, helped her enter local and statewide tournaments. At every event, she easily defeated opponents who were older, wealthier, and from prestigious schools. Yet instead of praise, she met suspicion and stereotyping. When Maya was 11, she entered the Georgia State Championship and handily beat a wealthy white contender. Then, to everyone's shock, especially Mr. Wallace's and Grandma Alice's, the white referee accused her of a vague rule violation and disqualified her. In the hushed, stunned crowd, Maya stood on the tournament floor, back trembling, as parents whispered, "Obviously she cheated. How could she beat my son? There's no way." People like her don't know chess. They only know to cheat. Maya never forgot the sting of that humiliation. Prosperous white adults coldly declaring she couldn't truly possess her gift. She searched Mr. Wallace's face, tears threatening, but his appeal was met with curt dismissal. Later, gently, he told her, "It's okay, Maya. There'll be another day, but right now there's nothing we can do." On the ride home, she curled into Grandma's lap and cried in silence, her young heart shattered by injustice. From that day forward, Maya kept playing, but the joy drained away. Every tournament brought fresh fear and fresh pain. She realized the battle was not just on the board, but against prejudice forcing her off life's chessboard. When she was 17, Grandma Alice passed away, prompting Maya's hardest choice: to give up competitive chess and seek a quieter life, away from prejudice's sting. She moved to another city and took a cleaning job at a Lux chess club, not to prove herself, but simply to stay close to the game she loved. For 3 silent years there, Maya polished those priceless sets, endured the condescension and slurs, never revealing her true gift. But tonight, as Lucas Harrington's defiant stare bore into her, she knew fate was offering the fiercest challenge yet, one she could no longer evade. The little girl whose dreams had once been stolen was ready to reclaim her destiny, and this time there would be no silence. The moment Lucas Harrington threw that cold, defiant look at Maya that evening was no random coincidence. Behind what seemed like a passing glance lay a long history of pride, prejudice, and power. One that Lucas Harrington, the club's most famous Grandmaster, never bothered to hide from anyone. Born and raised in Boston's upper-crust circles, Lucas had grown up surrounded by privilege and advantage. His father, Henry Harrington, was a powerhouse in the finance world. His mother, Elizabeth Harrington, chaired a high-profile philanthropic foundation. The Harrington name reigned across New England, not just for wealth, but for their enormous influence in politics and society. From an early age, Lucas was used to being waited on hand and foot. He learned quickly the value of money and how to wield it to get whatever he wanted. Lucas wasn't just a chess prodigy, he became the embodiment of elite superiority, a poster child for white privilege, proudly flaunting both his intellect and his status. At 15, his parents hired the world's top grandmasters as his personal coaches. Their investment paid off spectacularly. By 17, he won the National Junior Championship, and by 20, he'd earned the Grandmaster title, an achievement almost unheard of in American chess history. Newspapers hailed him as the elite wunderkind and an unbeatable genius, and his face soon graced the glossy covers of every major magazine. But beneath the accolades and adulation, a dangerous darkness grew in Lucas, an ever-deepening arrogance and disdain for anyone less fortunate, especially people of color. His meteoric rise seemed effortless, cementing his belief that he had every right to judge others coldly and without mercy. When Lucas joined America's most exclusive chess club 3 years ago, he instantly became its golden boy. At every gathering, wealthy patrons flocked to him, lavishing him with praise. Lucas basked in the attention, using his power to humiliate the black staff members, as if their discomfort were a refined amusement for his privileged friends. Maya Bennett quickly became his favorite target. He saw in her quiet endurance a weakness to exploit. Lucas never even regarded her as a person, just that black cleaner, someone he could flaunt his power over at any moment. One afternoon not long ago, as Lucas relaxed with friends in the members' lounge, Maya accidentally dropped her dust cloth onto his prized chessboard. In an instant, he raised his voice just loud enough for everyone to hear. "Hey, Bennett, this is my chess set, not a place for you to mess around. I know you'd never touch something like this if you weren't paid to clean, but do you even have any idea what this is worth? It's worth more than your entire life." His companions laughed at the vicious jab, while Maya simply bent to pick up the cloth. Pain flickered in her eyes, but Lucas didn't care. He reveled in her silent suffering. These cruel barbs became Lucas's habit, and sadly, no one in the club dared object. No one wanted to cross the most powerful man in the room. Lucas even once declared before his wealthy audience, "Only those truly born to dominate can appreciate the real beauty of chess. Others, especially the black staff around here, should stick to dusting these boards. That's the only role they're fit for." His remark drew approving guffaws, but it cut deep into Maya's soul. Though wounded, she remained silent, believing that one day the truth would speak for her. But tonight was different. Lucas wasn't content with a private taunt. He planned a public challenge before the entire elite crowd, intended to make Maya the most unforgettable joke of the night. He wanted to reaffirm his own status and remind everyone who really belonged at the Grandmaster's table. Lucas Harrington, chess superstar, was convinced this would be his grandest spectacle yet. He had no idea that his arrogant provocation would unleash a turning point he could never have anticipated, and force him to confront a truth he'd never been prepared to face. Lucas Harrington never imagined that choosing Maya as the target of his cruel amusement on this charity night would have such far-reaching consequences. To Lucas, it was simply the perfect opportunity to reaffirm his supreme status before a wealthy audience. A thrilling diversion meant to underscore his power and privilege, which he took for granted. That evening, the club's atmosphere was more formal and sumptuous than ever. Crystal chandeliers cast sparkling light over glasses of deep red wine, while a classical ensemble's gentle melodies filled the grand hall, creating an air of elegance and opulence. Well-dressed gentlemen in tailored tuxedos and ladies in lavish evening gowns gathered around the large chessboard positioned at center stage. This annual fundraising event was the club's way of publicly showcasing its members' generosity and, above all, flaunting their status to one another. Standing at the heart of the room was Lucas Harrington, the club's most celebrated Grandmaster. He wore a meticulously tailored black suit, his face radiating confidence, his eyes shining with ambition and pride. As the applause died down, Lucas stepped forward, champagne flute in hand. He scanned the crowd with a courteous but challenging smile and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, tonight, aside from our noble charitable goals, I thought we might spice things up with a bit of special entertainment. After careful thought, I've concluded that the best way to illustrate the difference between true genius and, well, the rest of us, is with a chess match." The audience erupted in delighted laughter and enthusiastic applause. Lucas continued, his cold gaze fixed on Maya Bennett, the black woman quietly cleaning in the corner. And who could make a more perfect opponent than our diligent cleaning attendant, Miss Bennett here? We all know she's had plenty of time to polish each piece, but can she do anything beyond that? What a rare opportunity to demonstrate the superiority of intellect and social standing before all of us. His words rang out harshly, dripping with contempt. Every head turned toward Maya, and a ripple of mocking giggles spread through the room. Maya felt her chest tighten, each insult cut like a knife to her heart. She gently set down her cloth, striving to keep her face composed, though her voice trembled as she spoke. I'm afraid I can't, Mr. Harrington. I'm just the cleaner, and I don't play chess well enough for you to expect. Please allow me to return to my work." But Lucas refused to let her off the hook. Stepping closer, he raised his voice so everyone could hear. "Oh, dear Maya, you shouldn't be so modest. I think you should take on this challenge. After all, it's your chance to prove to all of us that you're capable of more than cleaning. Perhaps we'll even discover some hidden talent in someone like you." Laughter rang out again, accompanied by the wealthy onlookers' cruel whispers. "Someone like her can't possibly know the moves, can she? Let's see, it should be quite entertaining. She probably doesn't even know how the queen moves." Lucas beamed with satisfaction at their comments. He relished the power he held and Maya's vulnerability under the gaze of the elite. Maya felt her chest grow heavy. Her heart pounded with a mix of anger and pain. She stared down Lucas's defiantly cold eyes and, for the first time in years, realized she could no longer remain silent. Yet, in that moment, she felt she didn't yet have the strength to speak the words she truly wanted. Charles Richmond, the club president and a close friend of Lucas's, stepped forward and patted her shoulder, deliberately speaking loudly for the crowd. "Come now, Miss Bennett, don't disappoint Lucas and everyone here. It's just a game of chess, surely not beyond your abilities. Besides, this will give us all a good laugh." His words were the final straw. Maya understood that if she refused again, the jeers and humiliation would only grow more vicious. Yet the reason she decided to accept wasn't fear. It was a fierce inner resolve she hadn't felt in years. Maya drew in a steady breath, lifted her chin, and looked Lucas in the eye. Her voice was steadier and firmer than ever before. "If Mr. Harrington insists, I accept the challenge." Lucas was momentarily taken aback by her unexpected courage, but then he broke into a triumphant smile. In his mind, there was only one thought. He would quickly defeat Maya, and with that victory, once again prove his absolute supremacy before this gathering of elites. But Lucas had no idea this would not be just another ordinary chess match. His arrogance and merciless taunts that night would unleash a confrontation he would never forget. A match forcing Lucas Harrington to face what he feared most: the truth. The moment Maya accepted the challenge, Lucas broke into a self-satisfied smile. With a flourish that barely concealed his contempt, he offered her the chair opposite him. He was used to total dominance over his opponents, but tonight Lucas didn't just want to win. He wanted to utterly crush her in front of the entire high society audience. Maya walked wordlessly to the board, her heart pounding in her chest, though her face remained calm and composed. She could feel dozens of scrutinizing eyes and mocking smiles trained on her from every corner of the room. As she sat down facing Lucas, the gleaming pieces before her suddenly felt unnaturally heavy. But she reminded herself, this was no ordinary game. It was a contest for the honor and dignity she had long kept hidden. Lucas picked up a white pawn, spun it arrogantly between his fingers and placed it on the board. Looking directly into Maya's eyes, he spoke with feigned pity. "Now, Maya, I'll make my first move very slowly so you can follow along. I wouldn't want you to get confused too early in front of everyone here." Laughter rippled through the grand hall. Maya said nothing. She moved her black pawn forward 2 squares. An extremely basic move, almost clumsy, exactly what Lucas expected from a cleaner. He laughed even louder, turning to his guests and sneering, "See? I told you so. She plays chess like she cleans tables, utterly simple, with zero creativity." Delighted chuckles and scornful whispers followed. Maya clenched her hand under the table, pain stabbing her heart, but she held her emotions in check. She knew Lucas was baiting her, trying to throw her off balance. "Don't fall into his trap, Maya," she thought. "Stay calm and wait for your moment." Over the next few moves, Maya continued to play cautiously and deliberately, showing none of her true skill. She performed the perfect amateur act, hesitating over each piece. Lucas grew ever more confident, punctuating every move with caustic remarks. "Oh, you really shouldn't strain yourself, Bennett. Maybe it's best you stick to what you know, cleaning. These pieces aren't meant for someone like you." As he spoke, he casually advanced his bishop, unleashing a sharp move that nearly cornered Maya right away. He glanced at her with arrogant satisfaction, awaiting her reaction. Maya stared at the board, feigning confusion, but beneath that facade, her eyes burned with a different light. Lucas kept up his verbal onslaught, determined to humiliate her completely. "I'm not sure you even learned all the rules, Bennett. Let me remind you, the knight moves in an L shape, not all over the place like your rag." The room erupted in cruel laughter. His audience reveled in the vicious spectacle, treating the match as mere entertainment. On the surface, Maya's expression remained impassive, almost resigned, but inside, she was quietly analyzing every move Lucas made, calculating every possible reply. The vicious words kept coming, but Maya vowed they would all be paid back through her real talent. Then came the moment. Lucas made what he believed was the perfect, most forceful attack. An all-out offensive meant to checkmate Maya in a single blow. He announced triumphantly, "Watch closely, everyone. This game will be over in no time, and our Miss Bennett will be back to her rightful place, cleaning tables." He leaned back to savor the mocking laughter, but at that instant Maya raised her head. Her eyes transformed, clear, sharp, and fearless, the eyes of an exceptional chess player, completely at odds with the vulnerable persona she'd shown so far. With calm precision, she executed a startling move, sliding her black bishop to a square Lucas had never considered. He froze mid-laugh, frowning in surprise. That move, one he hadn't even calculated, shattered the offensive position he had so painstakingly built. The room fell silent. The laughter gave way to astonished whispers. Maya lifted her gaze and looked Lucas directly in the eye, her voice now steady and commanding. "Mr. Harrington, the game is far from over. I suggest you choose your next move more carefully." A flicker of anger crossed Lucas's face, but he quickly forced himself to remain calm, telling himself it was just a fluke. Yet deep down, a sliver of unease took root. He had no idea that from this moment forward, the match would no longer be the harmless amusement he had planned. Instead, he was facing a completely different opponent. Maya Bennett in her true form, quietly poised to make him pay for every insult he had ever thrown her way. The moment Maya quietly reminded Lucas to choose his next moves more carefully, the room fell into stunned silence. The mocking smile on Lucas's lips vanished, replaced by a flicker of confusion and unease on his face. For the first time since the match began, he truly looked at Maya with something other than contempt. There was doubt there now, mixed with a hint of anxiety. Lucas drew in a deep breath, telling himself this was merely a fluke, just a lucky misstep from this cleaner-turned player. Yet his hand trembled ever so slightly, and beads of sweat formed on his brow, signs he didn't even recognize, proof that his absolute confidence was cracking. Across the board, Maya remained calm, seemingly untouched by his earlier barbs. She wore an expression of fierce concentration, her eyes scanning the position with unwavering focus. In that moment, she was no longer the meek cleaning woman Lucas had so often belittled. She was a true chess master, poised and sharp, an opponent he'd never anticipated. With each subsequent move, Maya only deepened Lucas's disquiet. Her piece placements were precise, every detail carefully considered. She no longer merely defended. She began to shove Lucas into difficult positions, dismantling the sophisticated strategies he'd used to beat renowned grandmasters. Lucas realized that every piece Maya touched was part of a larger plan, each move carrying hidden threats he had failed to foresee. The wealthy onlookers, too, started to shift their attitudes. The initial laughter and jeers gave way to whispered astonishment and growing doubt. How does she know how to play like this? Wasn't Harrington sure she was just a cleaner? No way. That move belongs to an incredibly seasoned player. Lucas felt the weight of their gazes upon him, and it rattled him further. He clenched his rook, searching for a move to regain control, but panic had begun to seep into his mind. He'd never faced an adversary like this, someone he'd always underestimated, who had now become a real threat to his reputation and pride. Desperate, Lucas resorted to his usual tactic, a vicious racial slight meant to break Maya's composure. He glared at her, sneered, and spoke loudly so everyone could hear. "Don't forget your place, Maya. Even if you somehow picked up a few moves, you'll never escape the fact that you're just a cleaning woman of color trying to perform beyond your station." His words were cruel, a direct assault on her spirit, intended to shatter her focus. But Maya didn't waver. She met his gaze with an almost eerie calm, and replied softly yet powerfully, "Mr. Harrington, this board doesn't see skin color. It sees only the talent and intellect of its players." Her composed retort struck Lucas in the heart. No one had ever spoken to him like that, least of all a black woman he had long dismissed. Anger flared in him, but it swiftly turned to fear when he saw Maya's next move. She slid her knight into a near-perfect square, unleashing a sharp combination that made Lucas realize he was slipping into a finely woven trap she'd set several moves earlier. Maya had flipped the position on its head, shifting effortlessly from defense to attack, and now Lucas was scrambling to escape her intricate net. "No way," Lucas whispered, eyes wide with shock. "She can't play like that." But the board didn't lie. Maya Bennett, the woman he always considered invisible, was now playing at a level that even Lucas found breathtaking. He searched her face for a flicker of doubt or panic, but saw only absolute calm, like a seasoned warrior poised for victory. Lucas's heart pounded as he looked around the room. Those same wealthy admirers who had once cheered him now watched with skeptical, scrutinizing, even disappointed eyes. He ground his teeth, bitterness and humiliation burning inside him. He realized he had gravely misjudged his opponent. Maya was not the ordinary cleaner he had presumed. She was a formidable challenger, a brilliant player he had never encountered before. More than ever, Lucas understood this was no ordinary game. This match was a matter of survival for his hard-earned reputation, his pride, and the power he had built his life upon. And for the first time, Lucas Harrington was truly afraid of losing to someone he had never even considered his equal. Lucas had never felt such panic. Each of Maya's sharp, perfect moves was like a cold blade, slowly and deliberately cutting off every escape route he could imagine. His head spun, eyes glued to the board, desperately searching for a way out, but all he saw was darkness closing in, hemming in the position he'd long believed to be under his control. The audience now watched with tense, astonished faces. Murmurs of disbelief rippled through the opulent hall. Moments ago, they'd been enjoying Lucas's cruel mockery of Maya, but now the mood had shifted to a charged, uncanny silence, as if everyone sensed the impossible unfolding before their eyes. Sensing his humiliation looming, Lucas frantically sought a tactic to break Maya's extraordinary focus. Unable to defeat her on the board, he resorted to his final gambit, vicious, hateful insults aimed at her skin color and status. He stared straight at Maya, his eyes blazing with anger and malice. "You think a few lucky moves will change your place in life, Maya? Even if you win this game, you're still just a lowly cleaner, born to serve people like us." He raised his voice so the entire room could hear, hoping his venom would make Maya quiver, lose her composure and blunder. But she responded only with a deadly, chilling silence. Maya said nothing. Her gaze remained fixed on the board with unshakable concentration. Each of her moves grew more precise and fearsome. Every time Lucas hurled another insult, she answered by placing a piece with calm, almost serene confidence. Seeing his tactic fail, Lucas escalated the abuse. Gritting his teeth, his voice dropping colder and harsher. "No matter how well you play, Maya, you can't change your skin color. In the end, you're just a black woman imitating a high-class civilization that will never truly be yours." His words reverberated through the hall, sending a horrified ripple through the wealthy spectators. Some shifted uncomfortably at Lucas's cruelty. Others remained silent, some even nodding in agreement. But Maya did not waver. She met Lucas's gaze once, her eyes calm, filled with strength and resolve, as if his barbs meant nothing to her. Then, with astonishing composure, she returned to the game. Lucas nearly went mad at her steely demeanor. Maya's terrifying serenity made him feel ever more powerless and desperate. Losing his last shred of patience, he unleashed even more scathing words, his voice trembling with rage. "Actually, I understand why you're silent, Maya. Because you know full well that, win or lose, tomorrow you'll still be an anonymous cleaner, and I will always be the wealthy, famous Grandmaster. That truth will never change." He slammed his bishop onto the board, forcing a show of confidence. But his heart froze when Maya, without hesitation, replied with another flawless move, her black queen gliding into a key square, creating a position that left Lucas utterly on the back foot. For a moment, Lucas felt everything he believed in shatter before his eyes. No more smug smile, no more arrogant look, only a stunned, fearful expression as dread gradually consumed him. The spectators began to whisper among themselves. Some pitied Lucas, others openly admired Maya. To Lucas, their eyes felt like knives cutting into his pride. Each glance, each hushed comment confirming that the respect and reputation he'd spent his life building were slipping away before him. But deeper than the looming defeat was the most painful realization he faced. Maya Bennett was not only his equal, she had far surpassed any skill he had imagined. That truth struck him like a powerful blow to his arrogance, and every prejudice he'd used to elevate himself. And when Lucas raised his eyes to meet Maya's gaze again, he suddenly understood an undeniable fact. Maya Bennett, the black cleaning woman he had so deeply underestimated, now held everything in her hands: respect, the upper hand, and the power to utterly defeat him. Lucas's hand trembled as he pressed it to his forehead. For the first time in his life, he truly felt the most desperate fear of all, the fear of complete collapse. As Lucas trembled, pressing a hand to his forehead to mask the stunned, desperate look on his face, Maya drew in a slow, steady breath. She was ready for the final combination of moves she'd seen coming several turns ago. She understood fully that this was the moment she'd been waiting for all those years, not merely to win a game of chess, but to reclaim justice for the painful memories of her childhood, and for the years she'd silently endured bitter scorn in this very hall. Lucas now had nothing left but a fragile, fading hope. His eyes darted across the board, desperately seeking any move that might reverse the dire position confronting him. Yet, every time he considered a reply, he realized Maya had anticipated it. Each of her pieces was perfectly placed to neutralize every counter. Finally, in utter desperation, Lucas reached out with trembling fingers and moved his white knight, an act born of sheer hopelessness, meant only to delay the inevitable. But no sooner had the knight clicked into place than Maya lifted her black queen with deliberate calm, her eyes shining with quiet power, and set it down on the decisive square. Checkmate. Those two words rang like a tolling bell, jolting Lucas back to reality. He stared at the board in disbelief. The onlookers fell into complete silence, their eyes fixed on Lucas's hopelessly lost position. The board was cruelly clear. There was no escape. Every one of Maya's pieces occupied exactly the right squares, forming a flawless net he'd never encountered in his life. The painful, undeniable truth lay bare before him. He had been utterly defeated, not by some Grandmaster rival, but by a black cleaning woman whose genius he'd dismissed. Lucas looked up at Maya, searching her eyes for any hint of mockery or triumph, but all he saw was solemn respect. That only deepened his shame and pain. He felt as if every ounce of pride and every conviction he'd built his identity on were melting away. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came. His gaze swept the room. Faces that had moments ago cheered him on now stared blankly, astonished. No one could believe what they had just witnessed. The most powerful, celebrated man in the club, prideful of his superiority and intellect, vanquished by the very woman he had publicly demeaned. In that opulent hall, an acute tension hung in the air. Disbelief rippled through every corner, shaken whispers, incredulous headshakes, as the audience confronted a truth they'd never imagined. Lucas felt the world spin. His face burned with humiliation and anger, but deep in his heart, he knew that his fury wasn't for Maya. It was for himself, for the arrogance, foolishness, and false prejudices he'd nurtured for so long. At last, Lucas lowered his head, placing his shaking hands on the edge of the board, and spoke in a soft, pained voice. "I resign." Those 3 words fell like a whispered confession, yet every person in the room heard them clearly. The silence was so complete that one could hear the ticking of the clock on the wall. No one dared move or speak. They stood in stunned stillness, confronting the impossible reality before them. Lucas, who once reigned supreme and embodied the club's pride, was now completely undone. All that remained was a humbled, broken man, defeated by someone he had always deemed beneath him. Maya rose slowly from her chair, her gaze sweeping the room with composed dignity, not a trace of triumph in her expression. She said nothing, simply inclined her head toward Lucas in a gesture of respect he had never offered her. As she turned to leave the center of the room, Lucas felt his chest tighten. He wanted to apologize, to say something that expressed his remorse, but the words lodged in his throat. His arrogant self-image had shattered completely, leaving only overwhelming shame and regret. When Maya slipped out of the spotlight, she left behind an absolute silence. The crowd remained motionless, each person gazing inward, forced to ask themselves a question they'd never confronted before. How could they have let their own misguided prejudices and blind pride rule their judgments for so long? Lucas sat frozen in his chair, staring at the board. For the first time in his life, he realized that this match had taken everything from him. Not just his reputation and pride, but the very illusion of superiority and power he once believed was his by right. And Lucas Harrington knew, with a clarity he'd never known before, that his life would never be the same again. As the oppressive silence settled over the room, Maya rose from the chessboard and stepped forward a few paces with a quiet, commanding presence. Her gaze now swept over everyone gathered. Those who had once despised her, who had taken pleasure in belittling a person simply because of her skin color and station. No one dared meet her eyes. They averted their gaze, unwilling to face their own consciences. Maya drew in a deep breath, then spoke in a calm yet powerful voice that carried clearly through the hall. "I know that for most of you here, today's match was just entertainment, a way to demonstrate your status and superiority. But for me, this game means so much more. It stands for the prejudices and injustices that I, and so many like me, have silently endured for years." The room grew even quieter. No one spoke. Instead, they were gripped by each word Maya uttered, as if their masks of vanity and deceit were being stripped away. Her eyes shone with conviction as she continued, "When I was a child, chess was the only source of joy and hope in my hardest days. To me, it was never just a game. It was a universal language, a level playing field where each person's worth was determined by intellect, talent, and effort. Chess has no regard for skin color or social class." Her tone hardened, resolute as she pressed on. "But sadly, when I came to this club, I realized that many of you, who pride yourselves on being the most civilized and elite, have turned this wonderful game into a tool for trampling on people like me. You were wrong to assume that your rank, your race, and your wealth could decide who truly belongs here." Lucas sat motionless, his face flushed with shame. He dared not lift his head. Each of her words stabbed at the prejudices he had once proudly held. Maya turned to face Lucas directly, her voice softening but remaining razor-sharp. Mr. Harrington, I bear you no hatred or ill will. What I object to is how you used your talent to insult and hurt others. Anyone who truly loves chess knows that it teaches humility, respect, and fairness, not power, status, or superiority. Lucas closed his eyes, struggling to contain the overwhelming shame rising within him. For the first time in his life, he realized how deeply he'd betrayed the very values that drew him to the game. The room lay in absolute silence, every person reflecting on Maya's words, feeling the sting of their own actions and attitudes. The elegant ladies and the dashing gentlemen all bowed their heads, quietly contemplating the behavior they once took for granted, now weighed down by deep regret. Maya pressed on, her voice soft but unwavering. I stand here not to condemn you, but to remind you that we all make mistakes, and we all have the power to change. We cannot alter the past, but we can choose how we live, how we think, and how we treat others in the future. She swept her gaze across the chamber and spoke with genuine warmth. I hope that after today, each of you will reconsider how you treat others, especially those less fortunate than yourselves. Do not allow skin color, social standing, or wealth to dictate how you treat your fellow human beings. In the end, we are all pieces on the same vast chessboard, and our true worth is proven only by our actions and our character. Maya's words rang like a profound bell, leaving everyone present feeling as though they stood before a mirror, forced to confront the prejudices and injustices they had long hidden. For the first time, they truly felt the weight of the harm they had caused, whether through ignorance or intent. Lucas remained seated, his hands trembling and interlaced. He understood that Maya had reminded him of the most important thing he had lost: respect and empathy for others. The atmosphere had changed completely. No one laughed or jeered. Instead, all remained silent, bowed in reflection, acutely aware of the gravity of Maya's message. When Maya finished, she stepped back, gave a polite nod to the assembly, and walked slowly away from the center of the room. Even as she left, the audience stood still. They realized that today's match was more than Lucas Harrington's defeat. It was the collapse of every arrogance, every false pride, and every prejudice they had carried for so long. They understood that from this day forward, their lives could never be the same, and that the greatest lesson they would ever remember was taught by Maya Bennett, the woman they had once looked down upon, but would now honor and respect forever. When Maya's figure finally slipped out of the center of the room, Lucas remained seated, silent in a turmoil he'd never known before. Her powerful, piercing words still echoed in his mind, each one a mirror reflecting the ugliest parts of himself he'd always hidden, parts he'd never dared to face. Slowly, Lucas lifted his eyes and surveyed the room. The wealthy, powerful guests who had once respected and praised him now bowed their heads, quietly avoiding his gaze. The cold truth stood naked before them. Lucas Harrington, long revered as the epitome of power and intellect, had lost it all, not simply through defeat, but because the painful truth about himself had been laid bare. Never in his life had Lucas felt so small and ashamed. His pride, arrogance, and deeply held prejudices pressed down on his heart, choking him as though he could not draw a breath. For the first time, he saw himself with brutal honesty, and he understood that everything he once believed in, every value he once boasted of, was collapsing. He rose from his chair with deliberate slowness, gathering the last shred of strength he had. Lucas stepped forward. His eyes, once cold and haughty, now held nothing but genuine remorse and sincerity. "I am sorry," he said, his voice rough and laden with emotion. The apology was quiet but heartfelt, cutting through the oppressive silence of the room. I apologize to everyone here, but most of all to Maya Bennett. I was wrong, completely wrong." He paused, his breath trembling, and summoned the courage to look directly at where Maya stood. His arrogance was gone, replaced by respect and sincere regret. I once believed that talent and intellect were privileges reserved for a select few, people like me. I deceived myself into thinking that status, skin color, and wealth determined who deserves respect, who deserves a seat at this table. But today, Miss Bennett, you have shown me I was utterly mistaken. I realize now that I used my gifts to hurt others rather than to lift them up. Lucas inhaled deeply, as if casting off a weight he'd carried too long. He stepped closer, bowed his head before Maya with a humility he'd never shown anyone. "Miss Bennett, I sincerely apologize for the hurtful, discriminatory words and actions I directed at you. They were inexcusable, and I am deeply ashamed of them. Today, you didn't just win a chess match. You shattered the deepest prejudices within me, something no one else ever could." Maya met his gaze, her expression softening as she recognized the honesty in every word. She said nothing, but her quiet forgiveness spoke volumes. Turning to the rest of the room, Lucas's voice grew steadier and stronger. He felt, perhaps for the first time, that he was doing what was right. "I also want to apologize to all of you who saw me as an exemplar of intelligence and success. I realize now I was unworthy, because I lost sight of what truly matters in chess, and in life: humility, respect, and fairness." One by one, the guests nodded quietly, grasping the depth of his apology and the genuine change he expressed. They saw that the man before them was not the arrogant Lucas they once idolized, but someone who had truly awakened. Lucas pressed on with determined sincerity. "From this day forward, I want to relearn everything I got wrong about chess and about life from you, Miss Bennett. I know I can't demand your forgiveness, but I want you to know I am committed to change. I will spend the rest of my life making amends and proving that anyone can learn and become better." Maya gave a gentle nod and allowed a small, understanding smile. She knew the road ahead would be long and difficult, but Lucas had at last begun the right journey, a path he should have taken long ago. The entire room bore witness to Lucas Harrington's profound transformation. The guests, who had quietly allowed prejudice to guide them, felt a stirring within themselves, a calling to change. Lucas's words stood as living proof that no matter how grave one's mistakes, any person can awaken and choose a better way. When Lucas finished, he bowed once more to Maya and to all present, then stepped back into the hush, feeling a calm settle over his soul. And in that deep, resonant silence, everyone in the room realized that today, it wasn't just Maya Bennett who triumphed. They all received an invaluable lesson in humility, respect, and the limitless power of admitting one's mistakes to begin a new and better journey. From the moment Lucas Harrington genuinely bowed his head in apology before Maya Bennett and the entire club, the first ripples of change began to spread throughout the room. That historic match was more than just the defeat of a famous Grandmaster. It marked the start of a deeply meaningful journey, one in which every member would have to look inward and confront the false prejudices that had long taken root in their minds. In the days that followed, the club fell into a thoughtful, almost reverent hush. Gone were the cruel laughs and scornful glances cast at staff of color. In their place was a quiet introspection and a sincere awkwardness from those who had never imagined the harm they'd done. Members who once flaunted their status and wealth began approaching the very employees they had mocked. One by one, they offered apologies and expressions of respect they had never before shown. Some even wrote letters or sent small gifts, clear signs that they had truly reflected and wished to change their attitudes at the core. No one embodied this transformation more clearly than Lucas Harrington himself. After his public apology, he chose to step away from the limelight and become a true student, learning directly from Maya Bennett. He was spotted often at the club, quietly observing her teaching young players, taking notes on the lessons he'd once dismissed. Every hour he spent with Maya was a difficult but rewarding step on his path back to being a better person. Lucas's example inspired others. The club's board, long hesitant to address sensitive issues, called a special meeting. There, for the first time, they seriously discussed ending all racist attitudes and dismissive treatment of their colleagues and members of color. Charles Richmond, the club president who had once egged on Lucas's pranks, stood up and spoke from the heart. "We cannot change the past, but we can decide our future. This match has shown us the grave errors we've, knowingly or unknowingly, committed. It's time this club uprooted those attitudes completely and become a place of true respect and fairness." After that meeting, the club made a historic decision. They appointed Maya Bennett as their official lead instructor. She would head all youth chess programs, not just teaching openings and endgames, but also championing equality, respect, and humility. Maya accepted with quiet gratitude. She knew this was a unique chance to spread the values she held dear. In every lesson, she reminded her students, chess doesn't just teach you how to win on the board. It teaches humility, patience, and respect for your opponent. Remember that each piece, white or black, has its own value and role, just as each of us has worth. Her heartfelt message quickly became the club's guiding principle. Wealthy parents who once overlooked moral education began discussing equality, respect, and social responsibility with their children. One day, after Maya's class, Lucas approached her, visibly moved. "Miss Bennett, I can't fully express my gratitude. You opened a new door for me, showing me what truly matters in life. I hope we can work together to spread these lessons far beyond these walls." Maya smiled warmly and replied, "Mr. Harrington, I'm so glad you chose to change. We all make mistakes, but the courage to recognize and correct them is what counts. Together we can create something better, not just for this club, but for our wider community." From that moment on, Lucas became Maya's dedicated partner in teaching equality and kindness. He was no longer the proud, aloof Grandmaster of old, but a humble mentor and genuine friend to anyone seeking guidance. The club's transformation soon reached beyond its walls, inspiring the wider community. Maya Bennett became a living symbol of change and hope, showing that anyone, regardless of background or circumstance, can rise and make a difference. And so, the club ceased to be a shrine to prejudice and pride. It became a beacon of harmony and mutual respect. And from that day forward, its new, beautiful journey had truly begun. From the moment the chess club decided to change its attitude, an entirely new chapter began to unfold. Not just for the club itself, but for Maya Bennett's life, too. Once a quiet woman, sweeping up chess pieces in the shadows, she had become a brilliant symbol of transformation, an inspiration that transcended all barriers of race and social standing. News of Maya's extraordinary victory over Grandmaster Lucas Harrington spread rapidly nationwide. Soon she was receiving invitation after invitation to major chess and social equality events, opportunities she had never dared imagine before. Everywhere she went, Maya impressed audiences with her calm presence, sincere speech, and above all, her profound humility. She never boasted about her win. Instead, she focused on the hardships she'd endured, the perseverance it took, her compassion, and her strength in overcoming the barriers of prejudice that had held her back. One of the most important appearances was at the National Chess Conference in New York, where top grandmasters and hundreds of young players from across the country gathered. Maya was invited as the keynote speaker, standing on a grand stage before thousands of admiring eyes. In her emotional address, Maya gently recounted the story of her grandmother, the poor Atlanta woman who first taught her chess with a worn plastic set. With heartfelt feeling, she said, "My grandmother told me that on the chessboard, no single piece is more important than any other. Each has its own value and deserves respect. I believe our society must be the same. Everyone is equal, regardless of skin color or social standing." Each of her words was met with thunderous applause and tears of inspiration. Her story not only motivated young chess enthusiasts, but also resonated deeply as a living message against racism and prejudice. Lucas Harrington, too, underwent a profound change after that match. Guided by Maya's genuine mentorship, he gradually dismantled the harmful biases that had taken root in his mind since childhood. He recognized the great responsibility he now carried to make amends for his past mistakes. Once a man proud to look down on others, Lucas became a vocal advocate against all forms of racial discrimination and social injustice. He used his influence and fame to launch powerful awareness campaigns. At a major press conference, he publicly admitted for the first time, "I once held deeply mistaken prejudices. I believed that talent and intellect were privileges reserved for a select few, but I was wrong. It was Maya Bennett who taught me that true greatness has nothing to do with skin color or status, but with each person's heart and mind." His words sent shockwaves through both the chess community and the wider public. A famous grandmaster openly confessing his faults and pledging to change spurred a powerful wave of anti-prejudice activism. But Lucas didn't stop there. He spent weeks traveling from state to state, holding talks and workshops on racial equality. In every city, he shared his own story as a cautionary tale, honestly acknowledging his past and inspiring others through his journey of transformation. Alongside Lucas, Maya dove into numerous community education programs, especially for children of color in underserved areas. She launched free chess classes that taught not only the mechanics of the game but also the importance of self-worth, showing young students that neither skin color nor background determines their potential for success. Their partnership quickly became an emblem of unity and social progress. The press dubbed them the unexpected duo, a living testament to humanity's capacity to overcome differences and build a better future. At a major event in Washington, D.C., Lucas and Maya stood together before thousands. Lucas said, "Maya isn't just the greatest chess teacher I've ever met. She saved my soul and helped me become human again. I will forever be grateful to her." Maya returned his warm smile and replied, "We're not here to dwell on the past or on ourselves. We're here for the future, for a world where everyone, regardless of race or background, is respected and given a fair chance to shine." Their heartfelt words created a ripple effect. Maya became a living model of perseverance, compassion, and the fight against injustice. Schools, nonprofits, and communities nationwide invited her to share her story, changing countless lives in the process. Thus, a humble woman named Maya Bennett rose to become a symbol of hope and inner strength, a testament that anyone can overcome prejudice and injustice to achieve something extraordinary. Under her guidance and influence, Lucas Harrington transformed from a proud grandmaster into a dedicated advocate for forgiveness, growth, and equality. Though many challenges still lie ahead, Maya and Lucas know they are no longer alone. They have become beacons of hope for countless others, and the journey they began will continue to spread far beyond the confines of any chessboard, becoming a grand quest for fairness, equality, and love. After days of spreading a powerful message of equality and respect across the country, Maya Bennett returned to the work she loved most, standing before a small chess class brimming with laughter, innocent faces, and boundless hope. Sunlight flooded the room, colorful chessboards neatly arranged, and each student, from every background and walk of life, listened intently to her gentle yet passionate instruction. Maya stood in the center of the room, smiling softly as she watched her young pupils search for new moves. In that moment, she saw herself as a little girl once, bright-eyed and full of dreams, sitting beside her grandmother with an old chess set in their humble home. But today, these children no longer had to endure the harsh prejudices she once faced. Instead, they grew up in an environment where a person's worth was measured fairly, without distortion by skin color or social standing. Near the classroom door, Lucas Harrington watched quietly, his face moved by emotion. He had spent a long time learning from Maya, and with every small gesture she made, Lucas understood more deeply why she could touch so many hearts. To him, Maya was not only the woman who bested him at chess, she was the one who won over his soul and conscience, freeing him from the biases and blindness that had haunted him. Before wrapping up the lesson, Maya stepped forward and looked tenderly at each child. Her voice rang out lovingly across the room. "Dear ones, remember this today. Chess doesn't just teach us about winning or losing. It teaches us a greater lesson about life. Never judge anyone by their appearance, their skin color, or anything other than the heart and mind within. Each of us has our own unique value, and each of us deserves love and respect." She paused, her gaze sweeping across the curious, earnest faces before her, then continued warmly, "I hope you grow up to be people who never tolerate injustice or discrimination against anyone. You can make that change happen, with kindness, courage, and genuine love for others." Maya's words echoed through the little classroom, planting precious seeds of compassion and fairness in the children's hearts. Lucas stepped forward, smiling through his own emotion. He knew these young students would carry on the path Maya had forged, continuing the fight against prejudice and racism she had begun with that historic chess game. When class ended, the children rushed forward, hugging Maya with love and admiration. Lucas joined her, speaking sincerely, "You've changed a whole generation, Maya. I'm truly grateful to have walked this meaningful journey by your side." Maya met his eyes with compassion and understanding. "It wasn't just me, Lucas. It was all of us here, each one of us capable of creating change, so long as we're brave enough to admit our mistakes, strong enough to stand up against injustice, and loving enough to forgive and help each other become better." The story of Maya Bennett and Lucas Harrington did not end with a memorable chess match. It became a powerful symbol, a profound reminder that the true value of a person can never be measured by their appearance or skin color. That message spread far and wide, inspiring millions to break down every prejudice and embrace a world of genuine fairness and love. If this story has moved you, please give the video a like, share it with your friends and family, and be sure to hit subscribe so you don't miss more inspirational stories in the future. Thank you for your unwavering support.